Have you ever made a decision and you've thought, man, I'm telling you, this decision is going to be amazing. And then it is definitely not amazing. Have you ever made it? I have. And it just goes exactly the opposite. In the Old Testament, one of the central features of the Old Testament, especially in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings and then 1st and 2nd Chronicles, records a period in the life of the people of God, the people of Israel, were these kings. About 40 or so kings, and mostly, if you read the stories in those books there, you find out that those kings were essentially a hot mess. And Rehoboam, that we read about, is probably one of the worst. He really, in his own way, we read a little bit of it there, did himself in. Here's at the end of his reign, he reigned for 17 years in Jerusalem, and here's the summary reflection on his reign that the chronicler gives in 2 Chronicles 12:14. Think about if this were how someone summed up your life. You would go, well, I didn't do well. He did evil because, again, they're looking back on his reign of 17 years, because he had not set his heart on seeking the Lord. Now, who's Rehoboam? Rehoboam is the grandson of David. We talked about David and his Rehoboam's uncle Absalom last week. And then he's the son of Solomon, the king. There's a lot of context you got to understand, without which you might not see the nature of the story. But Solomon was kind of the context for Rehoboam's reign. When I was growing up, there was a TV program that was on, this will date me just a little bit here, a guy named Robin Leach had a show, The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Some of you know what I'm talking, I bet you could find it on YouTube. The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, he was this British guy, and he would take you inside all of the luxurious homes of these fabulously wealthy people around. This is pre-Instagram, this is pre-TikTok, when you just see everybody's life all the time. It was kind of like, wow, people live like that? Oh, my word. And Solomon would have been one of the people that Robin Leach would have profiled. Solomon was, without question, a billionaire. The text says that when Solomon, he would take in 666 talents, which is a weight measure, of gold a year. If you put that out in terms of value today, that would be about $4 billion a year. And then the text says, well, that didn't even include the revenue of all the merchants and all of the people who came in, did business in the country. He had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots. He'd built a network of military installations all across Israel that he stocked full of weapons and men. And the text says that he made silver as common as stone. I mean, imagine the kind of wealth where it's like, silver, here, it's like stone. I've got a picture here of his throne. This is a drawing. This is not AI. This is a drawing of his throne. He had ivory imported, probably from Africa or India, and it was built out of ivory and then had 6 steps. And then on each side of the steps, you can kind of see that it represented there, were gold lions that he commissioned, that he laid over with pure gold, and then his throne that he laid over with pure gold. And I mean, this was his throne. This is the kind of money that he rolled with. You know, he just rolled large. And the text also says, if you know Solomon, if you know his history a little bit, he was the wisest man who ever lived. A chapter before this scene of Rehoboam, the queen of Sheba, a neighboring country, came to visit. And here it is, the queen of Sheba, when she'd seen the wisdom of Solomon, just put this in your mind's eye. The house he'd built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials, the attendance of his servants, their clothing, his cupbearers, their clothing, his burnt offerings he offered at the house of the Lord. There was no more breath in her. In other words, it took her breath away. How in the world did Solomon get all of that? Well, you dig a little bit back and you find out that what Solomon did to amass that kind of wealth and that kind of power was he taxed the people incredibly heavily, and he enslaved people. Now, Solomon is the son of David. David was made the king by God and was supposed to bring justice. And here's Solomon looking more like Pharaoh that the Israelites were rescued from than his father David. There's not justice, there's heavy taxation and slavery. So this is the context. You got to understand what's happening. Solomon dies, and his son Rehoboam comes to the throne, and then it's this scene that we read. The people come to him and they say, listen, could you just for a second lift this heavy yoke? Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and heavy yoke you put on us, and we will serve you. In other words, hey, over here, it's been pretty hard up till now. Could you let up, please? You're new, and not your father. You don't have all the things that were going on with him. And so Rehoboam, he's 41 years old at this point. You would think he would have a little more wisdom than this. And he says, okay, I'll tell you what, give me 3 days. And so he goes and he consults with the counselors, the old men, the elders that advised his father. And they basically said, now listen, hey, listen, this is your moment. Don't mess with, your father did some things that were evil. In fact, the scriptures say what Solomon did at the end of his life was not good, it was evil. And he said, if you will just be kind to the people and please them and give them a good answer and say, listen, I'm going to do better than my father did. My father built this wonderful empire. I'm going to change things. He said, if you'll do that, they'll always be your servants. Just be kind and generous. And then, interestingly, if you were paying attention, it made me smile when I heard even read it. He said, then he went and turned to the young men he grew up with. That's like this neon sign that's like, something stupid's about to go down. And they say, I'll tell you what, you're going to double down, Solomon. You're going to double down. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father whipped you with, what you're going to say in the meeting on Monday, right? My father whipped you with whips. I'm going to whip you with scorpions. And so that's what he does. And it just backfires spectacularly. Have you ever made a decision and you've thought, man, I'm telling you, this decision is going to be amazing. And then it is definitely not amazing. Have you ever made it? I have. And it just goes exactly the opposite. Israel says, we've had enough. They essentially go on the war path. He tries to smooth things over, dumbest thing he could ever do. He sends the taskmaster who he'd charged with enslaving the people to go broker peace. And you know what they do with him is they take him and they stone him to death. And the kingdom of Israel splits, and there's 10 of the tribes of Israel in the northern kingdom, Samaria, and 2 in the southern Judah, headquartered in Jerusalem. And he, because of his own decision, his own pride and foolishness, sends his country into a civil war. Now, I mean, are there times that you need to make tough decisions? I mean, sure, particularly if you lead anything in any way. But the reason you would ever make a tough decision is you're saying, I'm doing this so that everybody can flourish. That's a part of the thing that I'm helping to lead here and stewarding. It's just that's not what Rehoboam did. His decision led people away from flourishing and brought suffering on people. I'll give you some examples here. Jeroboam, who you heard about in the text there, he takes over that northern kingdom, and basically he causes the people of God who are supposed to respond to the word of God and the Spirit of God and open themselves to everything that God was about. He basically takes 2 cities, he puts 2 golden calves like happened coming out of Egypt, and he says, hey Israel, here are your gods. He forced them to become idolaters. He made it the public policy that you don't worship the God of heaven, you worship these 2 golden calves. And then he set up this thing called Asherah, the Baal, the shrines. There were cultic prostitutes, and I'll just paint a little picture for you here. Think about the kind of culture where what you do is you have fertility gods, and what you do is you make offerings to those fertility gods, and so you would visit the cultic prostitute because what would happen there would symbolize what you wanted, the fertility you wanted to have happen in your life. So I just want you to think about when something like that is elevated and made public policy see what everybody thinks about life. And so what happened was there was rampant immorality, there was rampant lawlessness. Think about the unwanted pregnancies that happened as a result of that. People were used and abused. This was an unsafe place to live in, all from one man's decision to do something out of foolishness and out of pride. I mean, talk about a culture of abuse and trauma that we're going to talk about next week, and trafficking. I mean, that was what was going on. In fact, Rehoboam's name, you know his name means? One who enlarges the people. He certainly did not. Sin out of foolishness and pride is the wound we give ourselves. That's how it happens. So how do you come back from what you did to yourself? I'm trying to paint a really terrible picture so you can go like, well, I'm not as bad as that. How do you come back from what you did to yourself? It's what the old men represent in the story. It's the one thing Rehoboam was without. It's wisdom.